Welcome to Thrive in Design, a podcast about making money and beautiful interiors as it relates to product-based businesses in the interior design industry. Each week, we'll discuss innovative strategies on how to approach product development and design sales in a shifting market. I'm your host, Nicole Lachey Ben. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Thrive in Design podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Lachey Ben, CEO and founder of Thrive in Design, where we empower interior product companies to amplify their brand presence and revenue through a human-centered approach to design and strategy. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing an extraordinary guest, Lorna Gross, a renowned interior designer, speaker, and lifestyle authority whose expertise has captivated audiences and transformed homes around the globe. From North America to London, Lorna's designs are celebrated for sophistication, personalization, and artistic flair. Recognized by Architectural Digest as one of the top designers to know in Washington, D.C., Lorna's accolades include the prestigious Designer of Distinction Award from the American Society of Interior Designers. Her work has been prominently featured in publications like Miranda, House Beautiful, and The Washington Post, just to name a few. With a unique blend of analytical and creative thinking, thanks to her dual business degrees and interior design education, Lorna brings a holistic approach to creating memorable, bespoke spaces. In today's episode, we'll dive into Lorna's innovative design process, her approach to sourcing rare and distinctive elements, and her vision for fostering impactful designer-manufacturer partnerships. This conversation is packed with valuable insights and inspiration, so let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Lorna.
Thank you. I don't know which Lorna you're talking about, because she sounded really good.
I'm so
excited, Nicole. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I'm so excited to have you here today. You've had some exciting things happening recently. We were on a panel together at High Point.
Yes.
You just launched a book and doing all the amazing things, traveling all around.
Yeah,
so
it's been a journey, that's for sure.
Yes, for sure. So tell us all the things, like what led you to a path in the interior design industry to start?
Well, of course, I'm going to try to give you the medium-sized nutshell on this one, but I actually grew up in a relatively low-income town it's a very small town in Louisiana. And I knew nothing about what an interior designer was. I never heard of one. I knew what an architect was, of course. My path was to try to make sure that I could support myself. So my original path was in business. So that's where those two business degrees come from. And I was in corporate America, was always a creative soul, but it was primarily based in song and dance. I was singing, dancing, maybe a little acting, not something that I could see myself supporting myself with in a confident way as a career. So I took the route that was a little bit more practical. But I always had a creative kind of part of myself. And I would try to tap into it in different ways on the weekends. Like I would sing in jazz clubs and things like that, to kind of make sure that I had that balance. And then at some point, I think when I bought my first home in my 20s, I started kind of looking at creativity from a more visual perspective versus the use of my body for it, And I think simultaneously was when there was more attention to interior design as a practice, as a profession. And I think the two just kind of came together at one time. And the joy of it started just flooding into me. So I did take a stab at doing it on the side while I was working in corporate. And then I got frustrated because I was working for a friend. And then basically I was like, are you going to buy the wallpaper or not? And he was like, no, because I just bought this really expensive pair of shoes from Nordstrom. And I was like, you know what? I give up. I'm not doing this anymore. So I kind of gave it up for a while. And then I was in corporate and my company sent me to a leadership development course or a program, really. And they were like, hey, Lorna, here's the deal. You got some really high scores, but you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing for a living. And I'm like, okay, so what is it I'm supposed to be doing? And so they're like, well, we can't tell you that. You have to figure that out for yourself. I was like, that's not helpful. But I left. I was in Colorado at that session and I was living in Chicago at the time. Went back to Chicago, and went to Barnes and Noble and was like, I got to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing for a living. And I came across this book that was a bit of a guide, a workbook that helped people do their passion for a living and figure out what their passion was. So it was pretty much a 6 month course of uncovering all of these things. And so I had to write my bio. I had to interview my parents, learn more about my grandparents. And what started to converge was this environment that I had grown up in and the influences that I had. So there was entrepreneurial spirit and entrepreneurship in my background and in the history of my family. But my mother was a teacher, but she was also a seamstress. Mm-hmm. So there was always these beautiful textiles around the house. And then my father was a contractor. So there were always floor plans around the house. And I just love to figure out, like, what is this? Oh, this is a toilet. Isn't this exciting? That's the on the piece. And because I grew up with that, I was always excited about the smell of lumber.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
And like, why like that? Because it was part of my upbringing. And so those things, I think, collided. And even thinking back on it now, like I was a kid who never played with Barbie dolls. I was always the Lincoln Logs chick, like putting things together and drawing 3-dimensional houses and things like that. So actually, that wasn't a medium nutshell. That was a large nutshell, but that is the whole story.
I love that. And I love that you were able to go back and kind of reflect and interview your family to figure out what are the inspirations that really drive you. And now look at you now. You have your own design firm with your own design philosophy and all the things. So as you've gone from that moment of exploring what your passion would be to now being an entrepreneur and focusing on interior design, tell us more about your design philosophy and how that has evolved over the years.
That's a great question. Let me just begin by saying this because I think that this is important just for any audience to just consider is to just not be afraid to make a change, right? Even if it's a huge jump. So this was a huge jump for me. And when I made the jump, I thought, man, I wasted so much time in this other career.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is that these things actually came together. And in I think maybe it was maybe the second year that I was in business, and I was like, oh, I see what God was doing. He was trying to prepare me with this foundation of having a business mindset to be able to sustain this business because, it's one that is atypical, right? But, regarding my approach to design philosophies, I am someone who loves the idea of personalization. So I never use the same product twice. That's been the case for now almost 19 years designing for people because I always want people to feel like they're special and that they're an individual and they're honored in that way. And whatever it is that I want to say we, because it's myself and my team, anything that we design for them. So when people come to me, one of the things that I'm focused on is making sure that in whatever it is that we're doing, we're bringing joy to their lives because most of the clients that we have are operating at high levels and are in stressful careers. And we don't want to be the ones that meet with them and serve them and that cause them more stress. We want to be the stress reliever,
Absolutely.
and bring joy. But, certainly from the beginning, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we were able to execute was a high level of personalization in design across the board.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just to know that you've never used the same product twice. I mean, there are tons, probably billions of different SKUs in the interior design industry. So that makes sense.
But it also makes my design more expensive and take longer, right? Because sure. we use the same things over again. It'd be so easy.
Yeah, and I've seen interior designers have a certain style and use the same things over again or use the same vendors over and over again. And then it's almost like a cookie cutter approach where every single client project looks the same and you can tell like, oh, that's an ABC design firm design over there. So I love that you're taking a unique approach in sourcing those rare elements. So how do you go about one, like keeping track that you haven't used the same thing twice? And then what's your secret sauce to sourcing all of these rare elements?
Well, I have to say, there is no system to keep track. There isn't. And every once in a while, we'll be in the design studio and I'll be like, oh, yeah, this is great. And then another team member will say, oh, I think we used that for so and so. So I will say, actually, probably 98% of the items that I've used over the years, I remember.
Mm,
Every once in a while, there's one I'm like, oh, I love that. And it's like, I love it so much that I've already used
right.
it. But usually I remember most of them. Tell me the second part of your question was where, oh, where I go. So everywhere, everywhere. I mean, you and I were at market and, I try to, when I'm at market, I go to my favorite sources, certainly. And I like to go at least once a year because there are new introductions. And what I do is I try to keep photo library of my favorites when I'm walking around wherever it is, High Point, or if I'm sourcing in New York, or if I'm abroad and I see things. So I try to keep a photo library such that when I have in mind, like right now, we're working on a luxury condo building and what that's going to be. And I don't want to say the name of the building, but I'll just say it's ocean related, right?
Okay.
So, how do we execute luxury around water? Because, that's really considered a little bit more relaxing. But, I go back to the library and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is cool. This is in alignment with the concept that we're trying to execute. This is water, but an elegant version of it. Yeah. So having that library is helpful, but then also just having a host of resources is important because you're not always going to have it at, immediate like fingertip reach. Sometimes you have to do some research and certainly, to find the super rare things. Because I love doing when I'm doing spaces, I always try to make it such that there are at least a few items in each space that no one can duplicate, or it's going to be really hard to duplicate. And so that might mean me going to sources that have antiques,
Hmm.
or me going to sources that might be overseas
Hmm.
or creating something from scratch that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, I love that. And I also wonder in your specification process, what the sourcing, or how can I say this? How a manufacturer can make it easy for you. Like, tell me about that experience. A lot of my listeners are from product manufacturers and they're always looking to have insight from the designer's experience with their brand. So you're
Yes.
sourcing all of these rare elements. Sometimes you're designing something near an ocean, so you have to think about, you know, the ocean literally being nearby and how that might influence the textiles or the furniture or the finishes. So in your specification process, is there anything specific that you love that manufacturers offer you as a resource or something that you might wish that they
Yes.
had for you?
Yes, let me customize it.
Yeah.
Let me make it whatever I want. Let me put whatever finish that I would like to have on it. Because truth be told, when you're doing luxury design and you want things to be look customized and bespoke, you don't want to just pull a product that is available everywhere. And let's just say there's some companies that will have like a stocked finish in a certain product, but then they give you the option of 30 to 40 more finishes that you can put on it. That's what I like because, the general public can get that stocked item, but they can't get it the way I'm going to do it.
Right.
Where maybe I'm going to add a little gold striping to it, and then I'm going to add maybe a espresso finish versus the walnut that it's already stocked in. So letting me be able to customize it from that perspective and also from a dimension perspective. So the first was artistic and the second is, dimension so that I can make sure that it fits that space exactly. One of the projects that I did a couple of years ago that was published was one where there was this perfect sofa, but the back of it was too high because it actually passed the sill of the window and there wasn't enough light coming in the windows as it was. So I didn't want to block it. And they let us lower the back of that sofa, which looks perfect in the space right now. It looks like that room was made around the sofa.
Yeah.
So those kinds of things, that flexibility really is important.
Hmm.
And I think beyond specification, just, customer service is so huge. Customer service is huge because we, especially here, our business is very fast paced. Like we're rolling in here. And today is not a different day. Today's same, like crazy in here today. But yeah, so, being responsive, being enthusiastic,
Absolutely.
that all of that helps along the way when we look at who we want to partner with and who we consistently use on a regular basis.
Yeah, I love that. So the customization, the dimensions,
Yes, yes.
artistically, the dimensions, and then customer service. So those are the 3 points you just shared. I love that.
Yes, yes.
Thrive in Design is more than just a podcast. We are a design and innovation consultancy that focuses on helping interior product companies increase their brand awareness and revenue. We do this by truly understanding a designer's experience with your brand. We need to know what they experience from the time they learn about your brand, through the specification process, through that product being shipped out to the job site. Understanding pain points in that experience is crucial in increasing your brand awareness and revenue. So whether you need to revamp your branding, marketing, or sales strategy, or the complete customer journey, we are here to help your company thrive. Head to thriveanddesign.co/contact and let's get the conversation going about how we can help your interior product company. So I would love to get some more inspiration from your creative process. You shared a little bit about how you take and keep a photo library of all the different pieces that you might see at market or when you travel. So tell me a little bit more about what inspires you in your creative process as you're working on a design project.
Yes. So I'm always inspired by the client, beyond what they're saying. Literally, I'm listening for tone. I'm watching how they move. I'm looking at their facial expression. I'm looking at, what emotes joy when they speak about it. And I'm tuning in. I'm tapping into exactly that as much as I can. I'm listening to maybe in a conversation what stresses them out, that maybe they're just talking about something in general, but I'm listening to the tone behind it and something doesn't seem right. So my job is to improve their quality of life, not just from an aesthetic standpoint, but also functionally. Like that is what I see as my job. So that's really the first place that I start when I think about how I'm going to create this design. Now, from there, let's just say that, we're talking about a business. Well, if it's business, then I'm going to get an answer to what are the core values that your business stands on? What is it that you want your guests to feel when they come to your office? Those kinds of things. From a residential standpoint, I'm asking the client, okay, so when you come home from work, what do you want to feel or think when you come home?
Absolutely.
Do you want, what's more important, wow factor or comfort? What do you want your guests to think or feel when they come to visit your house? Is it that you want them to feel like they're welcomed, or do you want them to go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you got this in your house? I mean, and sometimes it's a combination of those things. And maybe, it's like, okay, they rate wow factor at a 4 and comfort at 10. And sometimes it varies by the room. So I'm paying attention to all of those things. I also get inspiration from my travels, just going to different countries and seeing textiles and things like that. And I was thinking of one other thing when you were asking me. Oh, yes, I get inspiration from jewelry. I love chunky jewelry that has different kinds of jewels in it. I'm fascinated by the way a jeweler will set it, in a setting, especially bracelets and chunky rings and things like that. Like I look at the colors of the stones and how they look next to each other,
Yeah.
from a sapphire to a ruby to a jade or a turquoise even. It's just interesting to me how they look against different metal finishes. And, I'm in some ways I can be a glamour girl. So that makes sense because I'm always trying to add some kind of metallic somewhere to some of my projects and somewhat.
I love that. I mean, everybody has to have a signature on their project, right? So yours could be that little touch of glitz and glamour from the jewelry you're
It's gonna be
inspired
a
by.
little glam. Exactly. Even if I'm doing industrial, there's just gonna be a little glam to take it to the next level. Even if it's subtle.
I love that. So let's talk business for a quick second. Because
Yes.
since you come from a corporate background, you have these business degrees. I'd love to understand, like, I know you're working with a client in a creative perspective and you're being inspired by all of these things and coming to the final product of their project. But tell us about like the nuts and bolts of your business. Like, how do you go about finding your clients? What's some key strategies that you're using right now that kind of sets you apart from other interior design firms out there?
Okay, so many questions in
Oh,
one.
yeah.
So, okay. No, I think one of the questions that you asked is kind of interesting to me, and I'm just thinking about it in this moment as far as how we find our clients. And I think that I feel like it changes every maybe 2 years.
Okay.
You know, the way that we started, the way that I started was kind of cool. I started just before the first really bad recession. And I was fortunate because I wasn't relying on referrals for my business at the time. Like I was new. So I was like one of the first designers who had a website, that was like, so people would find me because that's what was happening. People would find me by Googling. But I feel like every couple of years, it's a different way that you have to go about find it or putting yourself out there. For example, there was a period of time where all you wanted to do was to get your project into a published magazine so that your work could be seen. Well, the magazines have, not, they haven't all disappeared. There's some great shelter magazines that are still around, but there are a lot that aren't anymore. So you can't necessarily rely on that as your primary source for getting new clients. I feel like in this time, you have to be so many different places and you have to be those places well. Like you just can't be there and just say, hey, you know what? I'm on Instagram. You better be on Instagram and be fabulous. You better show what you're doing. You better show some good stuff on Instagram. But yes, so, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn because, a number of my clients really don't spend a lot of time on Instagram. They spend most of their time in the business world. So they're on LinkedIn. And what kind of information that's valuable am I supplying to them to draw their attention and let them know that there's credibility behind the designer that they see? Certainly the Google searches are important, but also, we try to build relationships with different networking organizations and things like that, be it builders, be it architects, be it real estate agents, be it, we just got a new client from one of the other organizations that it's a business enterprise organization that I'm in. So I feel like right now you have to be so many different places. To answer the question regarding how are we differentiated from most of the other design firms that are out there, I think expertise and credibility regarding licensing and certifications, like that is one of the things that my firm has always stood on. I knew coming out the gate that what I wanted to do was to be differentiated along the lines of respect, such that when somebody had to make a decision about a designer, they didn't have to look at our firm and go, I'm not sure if I can rely on them. I'm not sure if I can trust them. What I wanted them to know is you're going to get beauty from us, but you're also going to get the solid core of the analytics behind the design such that we know our codes, we know our dimensions. I'm not going to recommend a cocktail table that's too big. I'm not going to give you a dining room where you can't walk around the table or circulate through your space. I'm going to make sure that when we're doing kitchen renovations, that you can move through that space. So that's really one of the biggest differentiators for us that has been important the whole time. Like I never want to let that go. And when I'm sourcing my team members, I'm making sure that they're equipped, like they're NCIDQ, which is, of course, our version of the bar exam, which is not easy to pass. It's so brutal, but we know what we're doing. We know what we're doing. And we start with the analytics first before we do beauty.
Absolutely. I understand. That is awesome. And another thing that you said in your answer to my first question there was just how things have shifted business wise. You started, people were finding you really through SEO because you had a website. Then it shifted into magazines, and now you have to kind of have a diversified business development and marketing strategy to attract your clients. And with all of those shifts in business, there's also shifts in trends in our industry as well. So
Okay,
let's
but hold on before you tell me the next question. I just want to add one more thing because I forgot this. Girl, referrals. Referrals are so important, because what happens with referrals is you're going to wind up getting a project that's similar to the project you just did, which is typically within your wheelhouse. And what that also means is you have to do all of your projects at a very high level so that you can get the referrals, right?
Absolutely.
I know if my clients are anything like me, I don't refer anyone for anything unless I am really, really sure
Hmm.
because I know that my reputation is on the line. So, sorry, I just wanted to add that in because that is one of the most essential aspects of how we get new business.
Yeah, referrals are big. I actually just launched a referral like brand ambassador program just for Thrive
Ooh,
in Design. So that's a good plug
ooh, do tell, do
right
tell.
there. So refer.thriveanddesign.co. Because
Okay.
I feel like in terms of diversifying marketing and business development strategy, I've done all the things, but
Mm-hmm.
most of my really good deals and business and clients have come from referrals. So
Yes.
at the end of 2024, I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this into a whole referral program. So I'm partnering with multi-line reps in the industry to
Yes.
spread the word about the Thrive and Design services. So I'm super excited about that. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Yay.
Okay.
Yay. Applause, applause, applause.
Thank you. So yeah, so as we talk about just shifts in all the
Yes.
things, whether it's business or marketing or business development, there's also shifts in the interior design industry as well when it comes to trends and how our industry is going to market with things. So tell me how you see trends happening and how you keep track of them. We'll start there.
I'll tell you the trend that I'm watching.
Hmm.
I'm trying to see if it's a trend or not.
Yeah.
I feel like coming out of COVID, there's a bit of a shift from the consumer needing us to do just furnishings to more construction and furnishings. So previously, our projects, let's just say, would have been maybe 75% just whole home furnishings, 25% construction. We're seeing the inverse of that now
Absolutely.
where they're getting so many more calls for the construction piece, the renovations of bathrooms, of additions on homes, of kitchens and things like that. And so that's a big one that I think may wind up sneaking up on us. And I'm just watching it to see if it is going to be consistent because I've now seen it. I thought that it was going to change maybe a year or two after COVID, but I'm seeing that it's still consistent now. So that's probably one of the biggest ones that I'm seeing right now. As far as what I would like to see, although I do like farmhouse chic, I could use a little bit more color. I'm sorry. I love design that's dynamic and that has interest. And so I want to be able to use the full palette, when I'm designing. Not that I want spaces to look like a circus, in different colors, but, definitely like being able to add interest in pattern and color. And I'm seeing a little bit of that coming back. So I'm watching to see if that's going to be consistent also.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like the trend that you're talking about in terms of people asking for those renovations as well as the design, I don't think that's going anywhere. At least not anytime soon. The one hope
Yeah.
that I do have, though, is for at least the construction side and the renovation to become a little bit more sustainable. I went to a conference recently and they were sharing how much waste the interior design and architecture industry produces, and it
Yeah.
was frightening. So I hope that as that trend continues to grow and people keep requesting this, that there's also some type of reform on the construction side or manufacturing side or something to like help our
Yeah.
planet at
Well,
the same time.
the thing is, there are the resources there, right? That can alleviate waste from happening. Because here we have a couple of wonderful, actually, probably three wonderful charities that when someone is renovating their home and that let's just say that they're getting rid of I don't know, a dishwasher that actually still works, but they want to get the upgraded version of it. Yeah. So these places are available where you can donate them to charity to benefit someone else that may not be able to afford, a basic dishwasher. So And that holds true for furnishings or even architectural detailing. So if it's moldings that are able to come off of a wall, for example, without being damaged significantly, those things can be donated and reused and repurposed. So there's really not a whole lot of excuse for not being able to somehow or other upcycle when you're doing these construction projects, because for the most part, the resources are out there to be able to make sure that they have a longer life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's good to hear. Those companies, I need to find them so I can help them like market better to interior
Okay. Well,
designers.
I will say all of the ones that we have here are local.
Okay.
So I think that maybe that's an issue, Nicole, where maybe there might be some locales where, maybe those kinds of organizations are not there yet.
Yeah.
But, we certainly here, we have three great ones here.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, let's talk about a project before we wrap up. Tell me about what's been your most memorable project and why?
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, I'll take the easy answer to this. And I do want to add one other thing too, before we totally wrap up. But the project that is the most memorable is the one that just keeps going on and on and on. So there's one that I did a number of years ago that is just complete Art Deco. And it's a project that is highly bespoke. It's located in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., that area, which is a historic area in the city. So I was asked to create this design to make it look like a train car on the Orient Express. And that project just keeps getting published over and over and over again because there's really so many layers to it and there's so much interest in it. And also, the client allowed me to have wonderful creativity. So I was able to do things that were a little bit different. And I feel like it's a feast for the eyes also. And it's a project that is, and I do try to do this with all of my projects to make them such that they're timeless and lasting, even though there's a decent amount of interest, but not one that has to be redone every few years because all of a sudden it looks dated.
Yeah.
So that would be that project. I mean, there's a lighting that was sourced from overseas from the 1930s, Art Deco, and then there's some one of a kind elements that I recreated in the space. So that would be one that really is the most memorable because it just keeps going. It just keeps going.
I love
But I wanted to, before we wrap up, I do want to share because I understand who your audience is, just to say, how much I do appreciate our partners. And, I know that Nicole, that I have just finished a book, Entertaining by Design, and that was recently released this fall. And it's regarding entertaining, which is one of the areas that I absolutely love. Right. So shout out 2025. I'm looking for a partner to help me create a product line for tabletop. So plug, y'all. Call.
You heard it here first. Lorna Gross would love to partner with a wonderful manufacturer to create her own product line.
Let's do it.
Yes, I love that. So as we wrap up, Lorna, tell us anybody who's maybe an emerging designer or an emerging entrepreneur looking to do all the amazing things that you're doing, being publishing magazines, traveling the world, publishing books. What piece of advice would you give to them?
Okay, so I'm actually getting goosebumps when I say this. So this must be the right one. Susan Jeffers, I think that's the author, wrote this book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. When I decided I was going to leave corporate Americas because all the trappings were there, but my gut was telling me that this was the thing that I needed to do. It was scary. And I remember telling my mother, the only thing that would stop me from doing it is if I'm not courageous enough. And sometimes you have to just take the step and move forward despite fear, right? Coming off of the tour for the book. Believe it or not, Nicole,
Yeah.
3 years ago, I used to say to people, I don't speak. I was not someone that was comfortable with speaking, certainly, not to large audiences. And this journey has made it such that not only am I addressing, doing lectures for large audiences, but I'm actually enjoying it. So there's a word that I love. It's called habituation. And habituation is when you're afraid the first time because you're not in the habit of doing it. But the more that you do something, the more that it becomes a habit and you just become comfortable at doing it. So feel the fear, do it anyway, take the leap.
Yeah, I love that. My motto for myself is actually do it scared. So I can
Yes.
totally relate
Yes.
to that. I'll feel all the butterflies and nerves and be sweating through the moment, but I'm like, I have to do this,
Yes.
especially
Yes.
if it's something that you feel like you are called to do. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Right. Oh, sure. My pleasure. And the cool thing about that is the next thing you know, like you're not afraid anymore. Then it'll be something else that you get in your lap that is like, okay, now I'm afraid of this thing, this new
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly. And the things just get bigger and you keep doing it scared.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. So, Lorna, if anybody would like to connect with you, to work with you, to start your product line, to get your book, where can they find you online?
Yes. So online, like I said, we're on Instagram at Lorna Gross Designs. Certainly, we're also on LinkedIn, Lorna Gross with Lorna Gross Interior Design. LornaGross.com is our website. And if you just want to email us, you can say email connect at LornaGross.com. So, relatively easy, relatively easy. But we're always looking for great people to partner with, great companies to partner with. And we value those partnerships and we see them as reciprocal relationships, not just, taking and taking, but also getting back in whatever way that we can.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Lorna, it has been a pleasure hearing your journey from corporate America to diving deep into understanding your past and inspirations from your childhood to how you actually started your new career path in interior design all those years ago. It's been so inspirational, and I'm sure everybody listening will be inspired just like I am today.
Oh, thank you, Nicole. I so appreciate. I love the fact that we had this, meeting of serendipity at High Point. I really appreciate you having me here today. It was a great conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on Thrive in Design. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Thrive in Design. And for more strategies on how your product company can innovate in the interior design industry, head to training.thriveindesign.co. As always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review so we can continue to create captivating content. See you next week.